Hello, welcome to this session on modern Western philosophy. Today we will be discussing the German philosopher Leibniz and his theory of pre-established harmony. Before we go into Leibniz proper, let's talk a little about rationalism. In epistemology, rationalism is the view that regards reason as the chief source and test of knowledge, or any view appealing to reason as a source of knowledge or justification. More formally, rationalism is defined as a methodology or a theory in which the criterion of the truth is not sensory but intellectual and deductive. Rationalists believe that reality has an intrinsically logical structure. Because of this, rationalists argue that certain truths exist and that the intellect can directly grasp these truths. That is to say, rationalists assert that certain rational principles exist in logic, mathematics, ethics and metaphysics that are so fundamentally true that denying them causes one to fall into contradiction. Rationalists have such a high confidence in reason that empirical proof and physical evidence are unnecessary to a certain truth. In other words, there are significant ways in which our concepts and knowledge are gained independently of sense experience. At its core, rationalism consists of three basic claims: the intuition-deduction thesis, the innate knowledge thesis, and the innate concept thesis. In addition, rationalists can choose to adopt the claims of indispensability of reason or the superiority of reason. Since the time of enlightenment, rationalism is usually associated with the introduction of mathematical methods into philosophy, as seen in the works of Descartes, Leibniz and Spinoza. This is commonly called continental rationalism because it was predominant in the continental schools of Europe. The philosophers who held this view most clearly were Baruch Spinoza and Gottfried Leibniz, whose attempts to grapple with the epistemological and metaphysical problems raised by Descartes led to a development of the fundamental approach of rationalism. Both Spinoza and Leibniz asserted that, in principle, all knowledge, including scientific knowledge, could be gained through the use of reason alone, though they both observed that this was not possible in practice for human beings except in specific areas, for example, mathematics. Now let's talk about Leibniz in particular. Leibniz was the last of the great rationalists who contributed heavily to other fields such as metaphysics, epistemology, logic, mathematics, physics, jurisprudence, and the philosophy of religion. He is also considered to be one of the last universal geniuses. Leibniz rejected Cartesian dualism and denied the existence of a material world. In Leibniz's view, there are infinitely many simple substances which he called monads. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz was born in Leipzig on the 1st of July 1646. He was the son of a professor of moral philosophy at the Leipzig University. At the age of 20, he obtained a doctorate in laws and he was offered a professorship at the University of Vienna, which he turned down. In 1672, he was sent to Paris on a diplomatic mission to persuade the Emperor of France to invade Egypt rather than Germany. There he met two greatest European philosophers of the time, Antoine Arnauld and Nicolas Malebranche. During that period, he discovered the infinitesimal calculus, but it was not published until 1684. While returning to Germany, he stopped in England and Holland. In Holland, he met Spinoza, a well-known philosopher. In Hanover, he accepted a post of court councillor. His duties were various and included librarian, political advisor, technical consultant, and much later, unofficial diplomat. In 1686, he was given the duty of writing a history of the House of Brunswick. Until his death, he did not complete the work. Instead, he spent much of his time with projects that were clearly much closer to his heart. In 1682, he assisted in the founding of the journal Acta Eruditorum. He published a number of papers in this journal. After tireless efforts, he established a scientific academy in Berlin in 1700. He made calculating machines, drew up plans for the development of a universal encyclopedia that would contain everything that was thus far known, wrote Latin poetry, funded alchemical research, and undertook studies on the origin of languages. During his life, he made original contributions to physics, mathematics, logic, geology, law, politics, economics, and linguistic philosophy. Leibniz made his own confession that he did not have the inclination to write a lengthy treatise that brought all parts of his philosophical system together. The new essays on human understanding and theodicy were detailed responses to the work of John Locke and Pierre Bayle respectively. Leibniz's eventful life finally came to an end in Hanover on 14th November 1716. Let us now examine the metaphysical thought of Leibniz. Leibniz developed his theory of monads in response to both Descartes and Spinoza because the rejection of their visions forced him to arrive at his own solution. Monads are the fundamental unit of reality, according to Leibniz. They constitute both inanimate and animate objects. These units of reality represent the universe, though they are not subject to the laws of causality or space, which he called well-founded phenomena. Leibniz therefore introduced his principle of pre-established harmony to account for apparent causality in the world. Leibniz's best known contribution to metaphysics is his theory of monads, as exposited in his work Monadology. According to Leibniz, monads are elementary particles with blurred perceptions of one another. Monads can also be compared to the corpuscles of the mechanical philosophy of René Descartes and others. Monads are the ultimate elements of the universe. The monads are substantial forms of being with the following properties. Number 1, they are eternal. 2, indecomposable. 3, individual. 4, subject to their own laws. 5, uninteracting. And 6, each reflecting the entire universe in a pre-established harmony. This is a historically important example of panpsychism. Monads are centers of force. Substance is force, while space, matter and motion are merely phenomenal. In Leibniz's extraordinary phrase, found frequently in his later work, the monad is, and I quote, pregnant with the future and laden with the past. All these properties are folded up within the monad. They unfold when they have sufficient reason to do so. Furthermore, the network of explanation is indivisible. To divide it would either leave some predicates without a sufficient reason or merely separate two substances that never belonged together in the first place. Correspondingly, the monad is one, simple and indivisible. The ontological essence of a monad is its irreducible simplicity. Unlike atoms, monads possess no material or spatial character. They also differ from atoms by their complete mutual independence, so that interactions among monads are only apparent. Instead, by virtue of the principle of pre-established harmony, each monad follows a pre-programmed set of instructions peculiar to itself, so that a monad knows what to do at each moment. By virtue of these intrinsic instructions, each monad is like a little mirror of the universe. Monads need not be small. For example, each human being constitutes a monad, in which case free will becomes problematic, because we are saying that monads do not have free will, and then we are saying that monads are human beings also, and then there arises the question whether free will in human beings comes within the limit of being a monad. Monads are purported to have gotten rid of the problematic interactions between mind and matter arising in the system of Descartes, lack of individuation inherent to the system of Spinoza, which represents individual creatures as merely accidental. So, we have now come to this idea of pre-established harmony. Pre-established harmony is a philosophical theory about causation under which every substance only affects itself, but all the substances, both bodies and minds in the world, nevertheless seem to causally interact with each other because they have been programmed by God in advance to harmonize with each other. Leibniz's theory is best known as a solution to the mind-body problem of how mind can interact with body. However, Leibniz also rejected the idea of physical bodies affecting each other and explained all physical causation in this way. The doctrine of pre-established harmony forms one of the most unique parts of his philosophy. It is also possibly the most well-known idea he ever put forth. Intimately tied to several key philosophic notions such as causation, God and the monad, this doctrine offers a creative, non-dualist solution to one of the most difficult problems of modern philosophy, the union of mind and body. Leibniz is most famous for his doctrine that the existing world is the best of all possible worlds. For him, a possible thing was one that did not imply a contradiction. I'm quoting here from Leibniz, "There are as many series of things that can be imagined not involving contradiction as there are possible worlds. For I call possible that which does not imply contradiction." The fact that God acts in the most perfect way and that he is a perfect being entails that as a creator, he must have created the best possible world. Otherwise, one can imagine that he does not quite live up to the morally and metaphysically perfect billing that he is supposed to. As such, God's beneficent will is what ultimately rules the world, and when evil happens in the world, it is only because some greater good will directly or indirectly arise from it. Leibniz does not mean to express that God does everything. The notion of substance in Leibniz, which is key to understanding the principle of pre-established harmony as it deals with the harmony of substances, is inherently associated with the ability to act. For as he writes, and I quote, "actions and passions properly belong to individual substances," unquote. A substance's predicates for Leibniz should be able to be deduced from the subject itself, and so it is seen that all that a subject does is as a result of its substantial nature, and so in a sense even that which is determined is done by the very individual substance. Leibniz then says that God's power to see all predicates of a subject is due to his perfect nature. The word harmony is associated with the images of synchronization, agreement and accord. The original Greek word harmonia, with its musical insinuations, is actually a relative of the word harmos, which stands for the word joint in anatomical sense. Leibniz says, rather true to these roots of the word when it comes to his doctrine of pre-established harmony. The doctrine, in short, primarily deals with the idea of causation in the universe, or rather the lack thereof, by virtue of God's beneficence and power in deciding to make everything in tune with everything else. As Leibniz writes, it is very true that the perception or expressions of all substances mutually correspond in such a way that each one, carefully following certain reasons or laws it has observed, coincides with others doing the same. This results from substantial independence and from the idea that substance acts. God plays a crucial role in the entire process, since he is not a mediator ensuring that the interconnection of actions is harmonious, but he is the very cause of this correspondence. As it is he that ultimately holds the power and destiny of the universe and decided at first how things would play out, whereas substances themselves are merely God-like. According to Leibniz, reality is a unity or is constituted by unities. By unity, he means what is simple, indivisible and capable of development in spite of being partless and having a unification of experience. The unities of which bodies are constituted are also real, with only one difference, that they possess no consciousness. So these unities and conscious soul unities are real unities, which Leibniz calls monads. The monads, because they are partless, came into being as wholes and go out of existence as wholes. That is, there is no part-by-part construction or destruction. God creates them and God annihilates them. Otherwise, they are uncreatable and indestructible. As simple unities, they can receive no communication from anything outside. They are windowless, and as a result, they become isolated. But that does not make them static or changeless. They are active. In fact, activity is their essential quality. They not only change but develop due to inner necessity. This independence and development, according to their own inner force and principle, confer on monads substantiality and individuality. What is real is individual. A monad is uniquely describable. It is a center of force. Every monad represents the universe after its own fashion. According to Leibniz, in the smallest particle of matter, there is a world of creatures just as a pond is full of fish. The higher monads represent the universe clearly, while the lower ones do it confusedly. For Leibniz, consciousness is not a genus in which all individuals share. There is no universal consciousness. What exists is many conscience. And these conscience are the many monads of Leibniz. In the hierarchy, we come across different kinds of monads: the self-conscious, the conscious, and the unconscious. The first is a rational soul having moral freedom. The second represents the animal soul with no freedom and with no reason to guide it, but only instinct. And the third belongs to organic and even inorganic matter, where perception is quite confused and is guided by reflex action. The first type, however, has reflex action as well as instinct along with reason, and the second type has reflex action in addition to instinct, for the law of continuity does not allow a break in the line of development. The windowlessness of the monad has made the idea of interaction an utter impossibility. But somehow, monads seem to be behaving in such a fashion that would testify to their adaptation with each other. They act as if they interact. They change as if this change is a necessary part of some total complex. They develop as if this development has taken into consideration the development of every other single monad in the universe, and they are consistent with it. In other words, there seems to be a kind of adaptation of which no individual monad is the author. A symphony is exhibited which no one is purposefully trying to achieve, but is very much present in spite of innumerable monads, independent tunes according to their distinct inner principle. They are physically many, but ideally seem to be one. Plurality is there, but still there appears to be a unity or a harmony in which every monad is just a participant. Though no one has established it, it is already there. It is pre-established. God sees a unity in the monads. They exhibit a harmony through Him. He being the vinculum substantial, the binding principle linking each monad with every other monad. The pre-established harmony simply follows from this idea of God as a being who has all His perceptions perfectly distinct and His ideas fully adequate. God is called monad of monads by Leibniz. Descartes put forth a dualism that gave the substance of mind at least more control than the substance of body ever could give the mind, but not without complication. Leibniz, who technically believes in only one substance, thinks of God as the supreme monad, but speaks of infinitely many ones, certainly sees a difference between body and soul as well. But he is careful to avoid the pitfalls that Cartesian dualism can bring by saying that only soul is actually the only real substance of the two, and that the body is more of an assemblage that does not constitute substantial unity, whether the arrangement of its parts be regular or irregular. And so, it is truly only soul which is indivisible and indestructible, and which carries with it a general expression of the whole universe that is ultimate, really responsible for, say, the sensation of pain the soul feels after, say, being pricked. In the case of mind-body problem, Leibniz disagrees with interaction, occasionalism and parallelism. His famous analogy of two clocks says that they neither mutually influence each other, nor do they act under somebody's constant supervision. Again, they run accurately, but their parallel course is not without reason. A harmony has been pre-established between them. This can be occurring in one of three ways. A. Natural influence, like pendulum clocks, the way of influence. B. Having someone watch over them constantly to avoid any lack of harmony, which can be called the way of assistance. C. Having them programmed perfectly so that they will always be in agreement, the way of pre-established harmony. A. Establishing a causal link, such as a connection between the pendulums of these clocks. B. Asking a person constantly to synchronize the two clocks. And C. Designing and constructing these clocks so perfectly that they will remain perfectly synchronized without any causal links or adjustments. Leibniz contends option C is superior to the other options, And it is in this way that God ensures that the states of my mind correspond to the states of my body, or in fact that the perceptions of any created substance harmonize with the perceptions of any other. The world is arranged and designed so perfectly that events in one substance corresponds to events in another substance, even though they do not causally interact, and even though God does not intervene to adjust one to the other. Because of His infinite wisdom and foreknowledge, God was able to pre-establish this mutual correspondence or harmony when He created the world, analogously to the way a skilled clockmaker can construct two clocks that perfectly correspond to one another for a period of time. Now, to conclude this idea of pre-established harmony, Leibniz's doctrine of pre-established harmony marks an important innovation in the history of the philosophy of mind. Like occasionalists, Leibniz denies any genuine interaction between body and soul. He agrees with them that the fact that my foot moves when I decide to move it, as well as the fact that I feel pain when my body gets injured, cannot be explained by a genuine causal influence of my soul on my body, or of my body on my soul. Yet, unlike occasionalists, Leibniz also rejects the idea that God continually intervenes in order to produce the correspondence between my soul and my body. Instead, God has created my soul and my body in such a way that they naturally correspond to each other without any interaction or divine intervention. My foot moves when I decide to move it because this motion has been programmed into it from the very beginning. Likewise, I feel pain when my body is injured because this pain was programmed into my soul. The harmony or correspondence between mental states and states of the body is therefore pre-established. Now, to summarize all those things that we have discussed here today, Leibniz is one of the three rationalist philosophers who made great contributions to philosophy, physics, mathematics, logic, geology, law, politics, economics and linguistics. Leibniz's best known contribution to metaphysics is his theory of monads. Monads are centers of force. They are eternal, indecomposable, individual, subject to their own laws, uninteracting, and each reflecting the entire universe in pre-established harmony. Now, pre-established harmony is a philosophical theory about causation under which every substance only affects itself, but all the substances, both bodies and minds in the world, nevertheless seem to causally interact with each other because they have been programmed by God in advance to harmonize with each other. Plurality is there, but still there appears to be a unity or a harmony in which every monad is just a participant. Though no one has established it, it is already there. It is pre-established. God sees a unity in the monads. They exhibit a harmony through Him. In the case of mind-body problem, Leibniz disagrees with interaction, occasionalism and parallelism. His famous analogy of two clocks says that they neither mutually influence each other, nor do they act under somebody's constant supervision. Again, they run accurately, but their parallel course is not without reason. A harmony has been pre-established between them. Leibniz's doctrine of pre-established harmony marks an important innovation in the history of the philosophy of the mind. Now, let us look at some assignments which will help you improve your knowledge on Leibniz's theory of pre-established harmony. First of all, explain Leibniz as a rationalist philosopher. 2. Demonstrate the theory of pre-established harmony. 3. Give an account of the theory of monads. 4. Bring out the role of God in the harmony of universe. 5. Discuss the mind-body problem in Leibniz. For further reference, I suggest that you go through these books and websites available. First of all, the Critical Survey of Western Philosophy, published by South Asia Books, written by Ballinge and Kulkarni. It was published in 1980. A Critical History of Western Philosophy by Y. Massey, published by Motilal Banarsidass Publishers, 1999. A History of Philosophy by Frank Tilly, Cornell University Library, United States, published in 1914. And A History of Western Philosophy by B. Russell, Simon & Schuster Touchstone, published in 1967. You can also look at these websites for more information. You can look at www.iep.utm.edu, www.uni/hanover.de, and www.mindmeister.com. Thank you for watching this session. See you next time. Until then, bye.